Coming down the aisle from northwest London, we bring you the Juggernauts of Wrestling, the Mac Daddy Lee McAndrew and luscious Lionel Manoff. Brought to you by JingTVOnline.com. Welcome to the Juggernauts of Wrestling. I am the Mac Daddy Lee McAndrew, and with me is the hunk of Harrow, luscious Lionel Manoff. How you doing, Lionel? You all right?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, I see that you've had a shave since last time and you had a haircut.
Yeah.
And I said to you before, that's normally a sign of someone being a baby face, haven't been clean cut. Well, you're cleaner cuts, you know. But yeah, Chris Jericho, when he was growing a beard, that was a sign he was going to turn heel in WCW when he initially turned heel. But you weren't watching them, were you? You weren't watching WCW at that point.
I did see Jericho in it, but it wasn't. I wasn't as, now I know, but that time I wasn't interested in anything to do with WCW. I was only watching all the old WWE stars in it. The only thing of WCW I remember is mainly the bits with NWO.
Maybe that'll be a future bit of homework for you to rewatch some of the significant WCW moments. We should definitely
That'll be harder because I don't.
Yeah, we should definitely cover Jericho's early feuds at some point because there's some really good stuff there. I think you missed a real treat. So no, I'll try and make it as fun as possible. Not like heavy research or anything like that. But as you know, Lionel, I've had a very traumatic week because this week I can't bring myself to say it, but I was blocked on Twitter by Ryback because I made a joke and he didn't see the funny side of it, obviously, because he blocked me.
Oh, God.
Yeah, there's a wrestling journalist called Richard Gray, and again, he made a quite innocent comment on social media, and Ryback jumped down his throat and made an insult about the guy's chin. So I just referenced that in the tweet I sent to Ryback, and then yeah, he blocked me. So mutual friendship that will never be.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you won't lose your sleep over it.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there are some really big Ryback critics out there. I mean, I'm neither a fan nor a critic really. I don't really have that much of a problem with him, but I'm a CM Punk fan, and I thought some of CM Punk's comments about Ryback were a bit too harsh. But yeah, he's an interesting character, Ryback, to put it mildly.
Yeah, he did. He had a lot of opportunities to at first, but then I think they just got fed up with him.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a bad push. To be fair, you try and push someone as Goldberg, then obviously the fans are gonna sort of make fun of it, aren't they? I mean, I'm not saying he was trying to be Goldberg, but the fact that he was certainly being pushed as a Goldberg type character, and the fans just saw through it.
Yeah, no, because I remember one thing about WCW. I do remember Goldberg in his prime. Obviously now he's not like I wouldn't say the main eventer now. In my opinion, I think he's mid card probably now. Even I don't know, but they keep pushing him to. Hopefully he's not coming back. I don't want him to come back to WWE because it just ends up being, he keeps saying he's not coming back again, and he comes back. But I don't know. He might. You never know. He might come back eventually but it shouldn't be for that main. It shouldn't be for the actual title though. But I don't know.
I mean, I think he was a credible main eventer in his prime. They were careful how they used him. They gave him short matches because he was still quite green at the time. But like I say, maybe it was too much too soon. And obviously, because of what happened to Bret Hart, for example. That funny enough, because we're talking about Bret Hart today. That kick was ended his career, didn't it? But yeah, so that's our topic today is the Montreal Screwjob, and the key figures in that are Vince McMahon, obviously, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Earl Hebner. But it is really about a story of the Bret and Shawn rivalry. And Out of
Yeah.
the two of them, Lionel, who's your favourite, Bret or Shawn?
Oh, it has to be. Well, I like both of them, but it had to be at the time. It had to be Bret.
Yeah.
Bret. I like Shawn when he was in the Rockers and stuff. I think Bret. Growing up, I enjoyed. I saw more of Bret. So
Mm.
yeah, but Shawn Michaels, but later on, obviously later
Mm.
on, Shawn Michaels. You know, it's hard. It's hard to really make. They're both done good, but they're both completely different wrestlers, really.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, they're the wrestlers who I think world champions should be modelled on, and maybe that's not a fair thing to say because it could be argued they didn't really draw that much money for the company at the time. They weren't. It wasn't a time when the industry was on fire when they were on top. Certainly as baby faces
Yeah,
anyway. I mean, obviously Sean's last run, it was doing a bit better because they were pushing Steve Austin. But like I say, as the top baby faces, they weren't really making big money for the company.
I wasn't a lover of the USA Canada thing, but obviously he wasn't. Bret wasn't a lover of it. The last thing he wanted to do was do Bret versus. Not very happy about doing it, but he did it just to please Vince,
But I completely disagree with you there. I think
But
that's some of Bret's finest work is his USA versus Canada work, in my opinion. And I think he did embrace it because it was closer to his own opinions. Not so much the USA versus Canada. I think he just liked America, but it was the stuff he was saying about the modern products and things like that. That they weren't cheering on typical baby faces anymore. They were cheering on people like Steve Austin. I mean, he actually got on with Steve Austin very well in real life, but it was just that kind of character who was quite heelish in many ways. I think Bret was at odds with the current
yeah,
product.
I did like it, but I think I mean, because I was more used to him being just it got quite getting used to. But by the time they did that DX versus
Mm,
the Hart Foundation, that was I think I like that bit, the DX and Hart Foundation bit,
mm,
which was quite good.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Shawn Michaels is my all-time favorite wrestler, so obviously out of the two, I pick Shawn Michaels. But I have so much respect for Bret Hart. I think you could argue that Bret's sort of the one of the people to look up to in terms of the fundamentals of wrestling, kind of putting together a match and the psychology and things like that. Whereas Shawn was all about the like the showstopper side of it, where it's like he put together these kind of high octane, exciting matches.
I think you got two different styles, so if two people are watching it, they can one will like one style, one will like the other style.
Yeah,
But I like both of them in different ways. Yeah,
yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, it has been said. I've heard it said by some wrestling pundits that too many people have modelled themselves on Shawn Michaels and not enough on Bret Hart. And it's not that Shawn's approach was wrong, but they've just done the exciting moves and not thought about the psychology side of things. Whereas
yeah,
Shawn was good in terms of building up psychology in a match and things like that, wasn't he? And the selling. I mean, that is one of my bugbears as well with the modern products. I mean, I don't think it's all bad like some people make out, but I just think they do these devastating moves and then the wrestlers just flip back up as though nothing happened. And that selling is
yeah,
just so important for the storytelling.
yeah. That's like when Triple H did the pedigree on an Ultimate Warrior, and he instantly got up straight away.
Mm. Though
That
to
was a
be
famous.
fair,
That
there
was a
was there
famous one.
was there was there was a story to that him doing the pedigree of the warrior because it was saying that this guy's so invincible he even breaks out the pedigree. But you want to save that for your special workers. I mean that match was an abomination. I agree, but but all the same you want to save that for your special names, your big draw attractions. I think again I'm not hating AEW because I do like AEW, but sometimes they'll have like their B show workers. And they'll do these moves and they'll just get straight back up on from them, and they just think, no, save that for the special attractions. Learn your craft and learn to sell.
Yeah, I think that's what Jim Cornette probably means when he's criticizing.
Yeah, and he has a point. But I mean, obviously, I find Cornette incredibly entertaining, but sometimes I think he takes his criticism too far. But makes some interesting points all the same. I think if you look beyond what the insults that Jim Cornette uses and listen to the actual message, a lot of the time there is some real nuggets of gold there. So yeah, we're talking about the Montreal Screwjob, and did you know, Lionel, this wasn't the very first screw job in WWF?
No, I probably don't even know. No,
No.
no.
Okay, well, let me educate you. It was Wendy Richter and the Fabulous Moolah, and again, it was in a November. Funny enough, the 1997 Survivor Series, but this was 1985. It's not clear entirely why they took the belt off Wendy Richter. It seems like it was something to do with her wanted to be paid more, but quite why that resulted in her losing the belt. Because I don't think she had a problem with dropping the belt, or so she said later on. What happened was they had this match, and she was against the Spider, and there was actually a wrestler in WWF at the time called the Spider, who was a women's wrestler. But in the end, they put the Spider outfit on Fabulous Moolah, and she wrestled Wendy Richter and that. And then what happened was there's this ridiculous count. It was like a one count, and Wendy kicked out, but the referee counted it 1, 2, 3. Yeah, then that's how they got the title off and gave it back to Moolah. So the reason I'm telling you that is because this was in Bret Hart's mind when it came into the Survivor Series. He was concerned
Oh,
something might be afoot. So yeah, if you want to read about that Wendy Richter and Fabulous Moolah, then go to the Jobbed Out Wrestling channel on YouTube. They got a very interesting video about that. So that's why I recommend you go for that. So at one point, Bret and Shawn were actually friends, and they'd actually had loads of matches before in the past. Like at one point, the Rockers did actually beat the Hart Foundation for the tag team titles in WWF, but the change was never acknowledged because it was a scrappy match because I think one of the turnbuckles broke. So it never got shown on TV, and as a result, the title change never happened. Then obviously plans changed. I think the Rockers got split up at some point, didn't they? I think the Hart Foundation ended up losing the belts to the Nasty Boys as well. So, like I say, yeah, we could have had your first potential title change there.
On the I think it was on the I don't know what show thing it was where Shawn Michaels shook hands with Marty Jannetty and then turned around and did Sweet Chin Music on him when he was being interviewed by one of the
Brutus Barber Beefcake. Yeah, it was the barber shop. Yeah,
and he kicked him through the window of the set.
Yeah, that was very visually impressive. That was the most famous moment, I think, on the barber shop. So yeah, they had also had matches as singles wrestlers. They feuded over the Intercontinental title, and I imagine around 1992, which we're going to cover at some point, aren't we? SummerSlam 1992.
Yeah.
But what happened was they were feuding over the Intercontinental title. Bret was the champion, and I wouldn't be surprised if the plan was for Shawn to take the title off Bret. But then they had SummerSlam '92 where they gave the belt to Davey Boy Smith because it was in England, and then shortly after that, Shawn beat him for the title, and then when Bret Hart beat Ric Flair for the title, the world title, I think they had he had a defense against Shawn at some big event, didn't he? That might be in the Survivor Series as well? I'm not sure. I think it might have been '93, I believe. Was it '92? Yeah, I think it was the '92 Survivor Series. Yeah, that it was Bret defending against Shawn, and again Bret beats Shawn with a sharpshooter, and it's a good match, worth checking out. Then eventually they end up having their match at WrestleMania 12, where Bret is the defending champion and Shawn is the challenger. And it was an Iron Man match, wasn't it? So, and Roddy Piper, who'd been the acting commissioner, said there must be a winner. So what happened was it went 60 minutes and it was a draw, and Bret had Shawn the sharpshooter. And then Gorilla Monsoon, who'd returned as commissioner, said that Roddy Piper had stipulated there must be a winner, so the match must continue. So now, obviously, Bret's broken the sharpshooter. Shawn hits Bret with Sweet Chin Music and wins the title. And then Bret walks away despondent. And that was to give Bret some time off. And it was also to build up. There had been some controversy over the win. So that's why they were going to have a rematch.
As Survivor Series.
I think the original plan was that, again, this never happened for reasons we'll go into. The original plan was that, presumably at WrestleMania 13, that there would be a rematch and Bret would beat Shawn. And then, again, you would assume WrestleMania 14 would be the final match, and then Shawn would go over Bret. But we never get there for obvious reasons. So one of the first problems that Bret and Shawn have was over Shawn posing in Playgirl. Now, Bret meant to do this as part of the story. He wasn't trying to insult Shawn personally, but in character, he was saying that Shawn, Shawn was letting down his family by posing in Playgirl. And Shawn didn't like that very much in real life. He didn't like that. And I think Bret just thought it was part of the storyline, but Shawn, he wasn't best pleased.
Was that when Shawn Sweet Chin Music came out of the wheelchair?
No, that was the year after, I think, and that's kind of when they were having their problems as well.
Oh yeah, because I remember he's in the wheelchair pretending to be, and then he just turns around and goads him into kicking him.
That's right, yeah. Although actually, I think that was a source of controversy as well, and it added to their tensions because Bret, for some reason, missed the cue when they went off camera, and Shawn didn't actually hit the Sweet Chin Music until they went off camera. Certainly, when the live broadcast took place. So I think Shawn was annoyed with Bret about that as well. So what I think eventually the plan was, again, that Bret was going to beat Shawn at WrestleMania 13, but in the meantime, I think there'd been growing tensions between them, and I'm not quite sure entirely what those were all about. Maybe just professional jealousy. And Shawn's ego was arguably getting out of control. Like I say, he's my favorite wrestler, but I'm not going to pretend he's always been the nicest guy in the world. He's been a real jerk at times.
As good as he plays a face, he played being a heel just as good.
Exactly. Actually, yeah, my favorite Shawn runs are as a heel, certainly like as heel Intercontinental Champion and as part of DX. They're my favorite Shawn moments. I just think him being a sort of happy baby face just doesn't gel, and him having that arrogance works the best. Right. So as I said, the plan, it seems to be, and there's different versions of this, but the plan seems to be likely that Shawn was going to drop to Bret at WrestleMania 13. But in the meantime, he loses his smile. So
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just losing his smile, but that's the bit of the interview people remember. He had a knee injury, and he said that he wasn't obviously he wasn't enjoying himself, and he was feeling miserable, and Bruce Pritchard was asked about on his podcast about Shawn losing his smile and whether the knee injury was that serious, and Bruce Pritchard reckons it was just depression. It was mainly depression anyway. That was the main motivating factor.
Yeah, that's when Vince McMahon was a commentator at the time, wasn't he? Interviewing him.
That's right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people in the back were apparently rolling their eyes. It says that in Bret's book, actually, that a lot of people in the back were rolling their eyes that he was giving up the title and sort of saying about his feelings. So they weren't very impressed, and I think also Bret wasn't too pleased because I think in his mind, Shawn was trying to get out dropping the title to him.
Because obviously he looked up very sad. I don't know how real it was or not, but
No, I think there was genuine depression. It's just like I say, you do wonder. I mean, depression is a real thing. I think you and I have both experienced it in the past, haven't we? So we don't need to make light of that.
yeah.
But
But
in other ways, you could argue that Shawn was the architect of some of his own problems.
I liked it when Vince McMahon was doing commentary at the beginning before he, I liked it because he was always commentating, wasn't he? And no, I didn't know who. I knew who he was, but I didn't know he was a leader, the owner at the time.
I only knew
But
that I've
it's,
been reading like the rest of the magazines, like PWI. I mean, PWI mostly kept kayfabe, but in their magazine, even they acknowledged Vince McMahon as the owner.
yeah, it was quite good because seeing a different side of him.
Hmm. I suppose
But
also as like the lead commentator, he could control the narrative, couldn't he? Of what was out there.
oh yeah, because it's up to him what he says.
Yeah, yeah. Because there was talk, wasn't there, that commentators he'd scream in their ear over the headphones when they weren't saying what he wanted them to say.
Oh yeah, that's why Michael Cole's a lot better now.
Mm. Mm. But that's also why people like Mick Foley left because he couldn't handle being screamed at by Vince McMahon.
Oh,
Because he was a commentator for a short while, wasn't he, on SmackDown, Mick Foley?
oh, oh yeah. And a lot of people were probably happy when Bret slapped him in the face.
But yeah, Vince McMahon actually gave up being a commentator after the Montreal Screwjob because people now knew he was the boss and they resented him for what happened to Bret. So I just think he couldn't do his job without people having a go at him. I don't think so. He gave up being a commentator after the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe Triple H will give him a job back as a as a commentator. No, I don't think so.
No, I think Vince McMahon's earned his retirement now. We can.
He's still he's still complete. He still owns majority of, and that, if he wanted to, he could actually do things, but he's not bothering. He's just going to leave it.
Hello, my name is Cecil. I am a stand-up comedian, but at the moment I am sitting down. That's a joke. If you want to hear more jokes, then check me out at jingtvonline.com. You can also search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, a number of places really. So please come and join me and have lots and lots of laughs. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, the actual match. It sounds weird. I kind of the only thing I can remember of the match is just it's a sharpshooter being on and all the stuff afterwards. I can't remember, and I can't remember much of the actual proper match.
Yeah.
Because I think that got taken away from the focus. Got taken on the end bit.
I mean that's the thing, really, yeah, isn't it? I mean, what could have been an amazing match? I think it wasn't a bad match up until that point, but what could have been an amazing match was ruined by the ending, really. But I mean, so that being said, it's one of the most talked about matches of all time, isn't it? Possibly for the wrong reasons, but it is talked about.
But the thing is, like I was telling you before, I know you said it because after he won, when Shawn Michaels come out the ring,
Mm.
this was before Bret Hart came out the ring.
Mm.
He went over to Vince, and when he walked past Vince wiped his face like as he's been spat on. So that's why I was thinking he'd got spat on. I don't know if it was for real or fake.
Yeah, but that wasn't Sean spitting at Vince. That was Bret.
No. This was before. No, this was when Bret was still in the ring.
Yeah, Bret spat at
Because
Vince from the ring.
oh, 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 I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I,
definitely Bret that spat at Vince, not Sean. Yeah.
oh, and I know Shawn was. You said he was acting to be. You know,
Yeah,
he wasn't being serious when he was being angry.
yeah. Well, I think Shawn, for his own protection, was pretending he didn't know anything about it. So he was throwing an almighty tantrum as he was leaving the ring with the belt. So, and that was all an act because he
Yeah,
wanted to make he wanted to sort of just deny responsibility for it, really.
yeah, I know. Obviously, I know the referee. I know
Oh,
that
Hebner.
Vince. Yeah, not Hebner. The referee. What's it called? Vince was the one who told the timekeeper to ring the bell.
Hmm.
Yeah, and and also about the fact that yeah, Bret he demanded two things, didn't he? And 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 he because he wanted a double count out, wasn't it? He wanted it to be a double count out so he doesn't lose in Montreal.
I think what it was is they described it as a schmoz, which is basically someone runs in, i.e., Triple H, and it's a disqualification.
Yeah, and
So I wanted
uh,
it so like it didn't really matter who won or lost. It was just because it would end in a sort of non-pinfall finish, and that's what Vince pretended to agree to.
yeah, and also about the fact that 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 if he was going to have another title match, Bret wanted to make sure it's not in Montreal, and two, it's not Shawn, it's another person fight.
Yeah, I mean,
But
the problem was that he just signed the deal with WCW, and the very next day after the Survivor Series was Nitro,
oh,
and
oh yeah,
and Eric Bischoff, would have likely announced that Bret Hart has signed for them. So again, Bret's been mindful of what happened with Randy Richter and Moolah, and Eric and Vince McMahon is being mindful of what happened with Alundra Blaze stroke Medusa. Because you remember, she
throwing a bin.
yeah, she threw the women's title in the bin. So he
Oh,
he didn't want Bret Hart turning up with the world title in WCW.
and doing the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think Bret would have done that, but again, I suppose he's always a bit concerned. There's that temptation, really,
But
if off the right amount. Yeah,
he's even admitted, hasn't he? You know, on the Austin thing that is that they didn't know they had. The WCW didn't have a clue what to do with him, and and he said he should have never left WWE. He said instead of giving proper matches like against even Hulk Hogan and all those, they didn't know how to use him. You have to take advantage of what how good he is and stuff.
yeah. I mean, since all that's happened with Bret Hart and WCW, the bad booking, the injury, there's been lots of kind of shots in interviews between Bret Hart and Eric Bischoff, where both have criticised the other. I mean, Eric Bischoff admits they didn't really utilise Bret properly, but I think at times Eric Bischoff gets fed up with Bret Hart complaining about things.
Because at one point, Bret Hart was a member of NWO at one point, wasn't he, for a bit?
That was very short lived. I think that might have been when he got injured. I'm not sure. So it was
Yeah.
really a short lived thing, him being in the NWO. But yeah, I mean, Eric Bischoff had said that he even though Bret Hart was going to be the WWF champion, he wouldn't have done anything with the WWF World Title because he had people in his ear from WCW high up, like in Turner Enterprises, saying to him not to cause any more controversy of that nature because they had different lawsuits pending. But obviously, Vince McMahon didn't know that at the time.
Bret wouldn't have done. I know he wouldn't have done that kind of thing because he still, even though what Vince did to him, he still loved WWE. So
Hmm.
you know, and also he had lots of, he had so many fans from around the world that loved him and stuff, and a lot of them, most of them they didn't take Vince's side, they took Bret's side, on that. and he made it worse. I know I watched the thing, but I remember watching that Raw episode when he was talking Vince, and he was just making excuses, trying to manipulate the fans.
I mean, that's it. The interview didn't had the opposite effect of what he was intending. The one with Jim Ross, where Vince says about the time-honored tradition, which was actually quite rare at the time. That was a nod that wrestling was predetermined, and they very rarely acknowledged that on TV. So that was quite the unique occurrence, really. Yeah. And then he said the words "Bret screwed Bret," and he in his mind it was people. He thought people would take his side over it, but they were fully behind Bret. I mean, it reminds you of that. It reminds you a bit of that. He hasn't learned his lesson, Vince McMahon. I know he's retired now. He hasn't learned his lesson, but that whole thing with Naomi and Sasha Banks, where he had Michael Cole making that announcement on TV about them being unprofessional, what have you.
Michael Cole probably didn't want to do it, but
I mean, you'd hope not, but yeah, it just it infuriated me. It was just so disrespectful to them. Well, also, I don't know if you heard about this one. When Mick Foley won the WWF title from The Rock, and the first time, Eric Bischoff made Tony Schiavone make a dig at Mick Foley and Mick Foley said, "Imagine this guy putting butts in seats."
Oh,
yeah. And people were angry with Tony Schiavone, but it wasn't really his fault. It was Eric Bischoff telling him to say that, and he just had to do as he was told.
That's tough.
I mean, I understand that with Tony Schiavone. What I am still annoyed with Tony Schiavone about is how he basically no sold Bobby Heenan. They'd commentate together, and it wasn't like Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon or Bobby Heenan and Vince McMahon, where Bobby Heenan would say outrageous things and the other guy would respond to it, with outrage. Tony Schiavone would just let what Bobby Heenan say fall flat and not react to it. And and people say about Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan having great chemistry. They had anything but great chemistry. They just did not. Tony Schiavone just didn't let Bobby Heenan be him, really. I mean, I suppose you could say, was it Tony Schiavone again, or was it Eric Bischoff micromanaging him? I don't know, but yeah, that's my major gripe against Tony Schiavone, anyway.
But the relationship was nowhere near like Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. Yeah, that was brilliant.
I mean, they were really close friends, weren't they? Bobby and Gorilla, and that chemistry sort of came across naturally on the screen.
Yeah, and even in his Hall of Fame, he said, he was crying. He said, "I miss Gorilla. I wish Gorilla was here." And also the episode of Raw when, obviously, part of the storyline was Gorilla Monsoon was supposed to be, I think, fired or suspended him, and he came to Raw dressed up as a woman, and then they took his wig off, and they realised it was Bobby Heenan dressed up as a woman.
And you're conflating two different things there. There was that eventually happened where Gorilla Monsoon threw him out, but yeah, that was the very first episode of Raw where it was seen to be so exclusive, not everyone could get in. So Bobby Heenan dressed up as different people to try and get in the building for the first episode. So,
yeah, that was when he was getting interviewed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what you think about this, Lionel, because you're Jewish, but there's one where he actually dressed up as a rabbi trying to get in.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, I'll show you that sometime. Yeah. So I don't know. You've got quite a good sense of humour. I don't think you'd be offended by it, but
oh no, that'll be funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. If once I've seen it, once I've looked at the actual footage,
yeah,
then I'll probably remember if I've seen it or not. Yeah. It's like Dean Ambrose when he got chucked out and he kept coming back as different people, including the Mountie. Like I said last time. But yeah, Bobby Heenan would have been, Bobby Heenan, and I would love to have seen Bobby Heenan, and it's a shame. I don't know. But obviously, Grinning Monsoon was ill, what didn't he? So you saw when he got, when he came out for his awards, how thin he looked. Then Grinning Monsoon, he was so ill. Then he
Yeah,
didn't look the
I
same.
think I think he was a timekeeper in a match, wasn't he? That's when you saw how thin he was. Yeah,
Yeah, and everyone cheered him and waved him.
yeah. Oh, no, he wasn't a timekeeper. He was a judge, wasn't he, for something? I think it may have been. I wonder if it was Butterbean versus Bart Gunn or whether it was something else.
No, I know, I know. There's a whole parade
Yeah.
of old wrestlers around the ring.
Mm.
I don't know, but he was. I think that was obviously that was a bad time for wrestling, and because obviously Bobby Heenan was on WCW, wasn't it? That's why they made. I saw that tribute. The statement that Shivani made with Bobby Heenan. Yeah, and
Mm.
you could see Bobby Heenan that he was. If he wasn't on TV, he would have been crying his eyes out. But
Mm.
but he was. But Bobby Heenan was. It's hard to recognise him when how ill he looked. He looked, but he still had the same. Even though he still had the only recognized him from his ring he had and
Mm.
the way his movements. He still had a little bit of him left. A little bit of the old.
Mm.
But obviously his cancer was very bad. Obviously,
Yeah, that
it's a
was
shame.
depressing, wasn't it? How sort of kind of how he was towards the end. It was
I wouldn't even recognize it
yeah.
if he was on TV just on another thing. I wouldn't. Yeah, he looks completely different. But unfortunately,
Mm.
unfortunately, they're together now.
Mm.
Bobby and Gorilla, but and all the other wrestlers that he's managed, Bobby, because he's managed. I think most of the wrestlers he's managed are all past. Most of them are on. I
Well,
think
certainly Kurt Hennig. Yeah, he was managed by Bobby Heenan. He's passed away. Rick
and
Rude
Andre the
passed
Giant.
away, but they Bobby Heenan and Rick Rude didn't get on. So
But they had to pretend to get on.
no. Yeah, I suppose on TV. Yeah, I think Rick Rude felt he didn't need a manager, and
Ah,
because he was good on the mic himself. Really, so he thought a manager was redundant. But I know
yeah.
I thought it worked.
Well, Rick Rude could talk, but I think
Mm.
I can't really judge if I would have preferred it on his own or not. But
Mm.
obviously, I like it. I liked it when he slapped Andre the Giant and Andre the Giant chokeslammed, just whacked him.
Yeah, yeah. Andre's got
But
as well. That's another one. Yeah.
and I'm trying to. Yeah, no, I can't think at the
Right.
moment.
Shall we get back on topic now about Montreal?
So
That's all
we'll
right.
end up
That's all
talking
right.
about
Yeah, nice little diversion there. Well, let's get back on topic. Um, so, did you ever hear about the Sunny Days incident with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels?
sunny days.
Sunny
No,
Days,
I
yeah.
don't.
It was
I don't.
this was actually one of the big boiling points in their relationship. It was because Sunny had at one point been dating Shawn, and then that ended. I think she went back to Chris Candido in the end, but there's always been talk of her being overly friendly, shall we say, with other wrestlers. And at one point, she was, I think, sharing some kind of area with Bret Hart, and Sonny claims that they actually kissed, but never actually sort of had sex or anything like that. Um, and what Sonny said in the book was a little bit. I wouldn't take it further out of respect for Bret's family. But you
Oh,
said you kissed him, so obviously you don't have that much respect for his family. But
oh,
yeah, so what happened was on national television they had a segment with Bret and Shawn. I think one was on the ramp and one was on in the ring, and Shawn makes reference to Bret having sunny days. And he says it in such a way that it's implied Bret and Sonny are having an affair. So
oh.
Bret's wife sees this, Bret's children see this, and when Bret gets home, his son actually says to him, "Are you and Sonny having an affair?"
Oh God,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff, isn't it, to be bringing out on national television? But this whole Brett and Shawn thing with Sunny Days, it does eventually lead to a backstage fight. And I
Oh,
don't know if you've heard about this, but I think afterwards, since they've made up, they both jokingly refer to it as a cat fight. But what happened was, yeah, Brett. I think Shawn gets attitudinal with Brett, and then Brett says to Shawn about the Sunny Days comments, and they get into a scrap, and Brett pulls out a clump of Shawn Michaels' hair, and
oh God.
yeah, and then what happens is Shawn storms into Vince's office with his clump of hair. He slams it on the desk and says, "Unsafe work environment," and then he takes some time off from WWF. Yeah, and he leaves for a short while. And
Oh God.
because Jim Cornette hated Shawn Michaels, he secretly stole that hair and kept it as a souvenir.
What, Jim Cornette?
Yeah.
I can't believe he's probably still got it now.
Well, I think Jim Cornette's changed wives since then, so it was at his old wife's house. So I don't think he's ever going to see that again now.
And also, I know the story of what the Undertaker said of the story of after the Montreal thing, when went backstage, Bret, before he left to go to WCW, he punched Vince in the face.
Yeah. So what happened was it was after the actual screw job had happened, and they go to the back, and then yeah, Brett's in the shower, and Vince actually goes to try and explain to him why he has to do it in his mind, and Brett says to him, you know, if you're not gone by the time I get out of the shower, I'm going to punch you. And I think in Vince's mind, he did partly think, well, let him take his shot if he needs to, you know, let it get out of the system. So Brett comes out the shower and then punches Vince, and then just that's it really.
Oh,
And Vince
oh,
said in his interview, didn't he, that he sustained a concussion from that. So
oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because I remember Undertaker. I remember him talking about it, saying that he couldn't believe he was shocked when he saw or seeing it all.
hmm.
But
It's quite a remarkable event, isn't it? And going back to the whole Wendy Richter Fabulous Moolah thing, I think what Brett thought they were going to do was do a fast count on him, because that's what happened in that match. And that's why he went to Earl Hebner and he said, "Swear on your daughter's life you're not going to do a fast count." And
oh,
and even though Earl Hebner double crossed Brett, or was forced to double cross Brett, he didn't actually do a fast count, did he? It was a phony submission.
yeah. So he could say that because he could say he swore because that's not how they cheated.
Yeah. But
But
I'll tell you how I experienced it in real time, because I actually watched it live. I don't know if you saw it live, but what happened was I was watching it, and I wasn't quite sure what happened at first, because I think I was actually writing some kind of online web article for it at the time. I was involved with some website or another, and I'd said, so what happened first of all was Shawn clocks the referee, Earl Hebner, and then he gets Brett the sharpshooter. Then the referee rings for the bell, and I think at the time that the referee's disqualified Shawn for hitting him. But
oh,
what's actually happened is um, then I've seen Shawn walking away with the world title. I think this doesn't make sense. He's just been disqualified. So why is he walking away with the world title? Then I rewatch it and I think, oh, Brett's obviously submitted in the sharpshooter, and it just was all very abrupt and very confusing. And then later on, I find out about what happened behind the scenes. That in fact, um, it hasn't been a proper submission in terms of storyline. Bret had been tricked out of the world title.
it looks a bit silly because they've left it too. They didn't give enough time for him to be in
Mm.
the sharpshooter before they did it. They should have waited a few more minutes. They should at least made it last for a bit longer, so it looks more real.
Yeah. But again, all that depends on Bret being willing, doesn't it? And he wasn't willing to drop the belt.
I remember one episode where I don't know what it was. Where it was the Hart Foundation versus someone, and then was it when Hart and the British Bulldog had to hold him back from Vince McMahon, who was on commentary.
Yeah, but that was all storyline, wasn't it? That was
Uh,
yeah.
oh yeah,
I think
before
what
that.
that was about was, if I remember correctly, that was about Shawn Michaels being the special referee for the Bret and Undertaker match at SummerSlam '97, and that was a really good match. Actually, it was because the stipulation was if Shawn was biased against Bret in the match, he would have to never wrestle in America again. That was the stipulation of the match. So Shawn's hands were tied in the match, and then
Oh,
basically what happened was he gets into an argument with Bret in the match. Obviously, this is all kayfabe, and Bret argues with him and spits at him, and Shawn's got the chair in his hand, and Shawn swings the chair at Bret, but Bret ducks and and Shawn hits the Undertaker, and then Shawn has to
oh,
come free.
I think I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
that was great drama. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I just remember. Just when you said that, I remember it. Yeah.
yeah. But there was a problem that came out of that in real life is that Bret, up until that point, had been the primary heel in WWF, and now Shawn was turning heel as well. So I think that was another reason why Bret was disenfranchised with WWF, because he felt his spot as the top heel was being given to Shawn. I mean, I think they were
Oh.
both sort of significant heels, but obviously they were competing for that spot. Hello, my name is Cecil. I am a stand-up comedian, but at the moment I am sitting down. That's a joke. If you want to hear more jokes, then check me out at jingtvonline.com. You can also search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, a number of places really. So please come and join me and have lots and lots of laughs. Ha ha ha. Right, so we're just back from a short break, and I think we should cover some of the arguments that led up to the Survivor Series. I think at this time Bret knew he was leaving, and he'd said to Shawn, "I'm happy to drop the belt to you." And but then Shawn turned around and said, "Well, thank you, I appreciate that, but I would never do the same for you."
Oh God.
And that is where the problem started in terms of Bret not wanting to drop the belt, because he thought, well, this guy's got no respect for me. Why should I drop the belt for him, especially in Canada of all places?
I know. It's a place.
Yeah, because Bret had actually said that, I'll drop the belt. I'll drop the belt after the Survivor Series, no problems. I'll even drop it to the Brooklyn Brawler if need be, but I'm just not doing it in Canada at the Survivor Series. And I think the reason he said about the Brawler, apparently the Brawler had won some kind of tournament in New York where he get a title shot. I mean, obviously they were going to put the
Oh,
belt on him, but good old
that would
Steve
have been good
Hardy.
though.
Yeah,
I
it'd
would have
be
loved to have seen
interesting.
that.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's a whole idea in theory, but the reality would be completely different. Uh,
Yeah.
I suppose it's one of those things. Anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. That would definitely be evidence of that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Brooklyn Brawl.
Hmm. But I think Bret was saying that he'd happily drop it to someone like Mick Foley, who obviously Bret was friendly with. Just he didn't want to do it before the Survivor Series because he didn't want to let down his fans. You see.
Yeah, that's caused a lot of stress for him, like in his life, personal life, isn't it? As well.
Yeah, that's one thing that some people have claimed that the whole Montreal Screwjob was a work. And one of the leading proponents of that is Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels' buddy. he believes that Bret was in on the Montreal Screwjob, and it was done so he could save face. He said, "Well, I
Oh,
didn't lose the belt; I was cheated out of it." But I'm not convinced
but
personally.
I heard Scott Hall saying that in the interview.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, these are Shawn's buddies, so it's interesting. People so close to him would say that, isn't it?
But Bret said he wouldn't go through all this if it was a story. Like, you know, it's definitely not a story. Trust me, it's definitely not a storyline. You know,
Mm,
this is a real. So some fans who separate from the real to they don't want to think of it as being real.
mm. Yeah, and Eric Bischoff, who's not a fan of Bret Hart really as a person, he even he said in interviews that he doesn't think it's a work because he dealt with Bret Hart after the event, and Bret was so broken by it that there was no way that he could be faking all of that.
I suppose even if he's on WCW, he's still probably got that in his mind all the time. Yeah, that helped ruin a bit of his career in WCW.
I mean, you could argue he probably wasn't in the best headspace when he joined.
Hopefully, he won't get anything like this again.
Well, never say
But
never, but you never know, do you? I mean, but sort of, there's always some controversy happening, and it wasn't. I know it wasn't a screw job, but the whole CM Punk press conference. I mean, that's wrestling's latest major controversy, isn't it? What that led to.
yeah, people have told Triple H to stay away, stay clear of him. He can always be one of Bray Wyatt's puppets. I don't. I think if he does come back, I think they'll have to put something like you said, have to put some things in his contract so that he can't. So if he does anything bad, they can just get rid of him.
Yeah, I think they should bring him back for a short-term deal, um,
Because
and
he
then
was,
or sort of an ongoing contract where both sides can or WWE can get out certainly of the
yeah,
contract.
because that was the worst thing. CM Punk is when he was with Paul Heyman,
Yeah.
and he made fun of the King because he had his heart attack, didn't he?
Yeah, but to be fair, that was storyline. So, and he also made fun of Paul Bearer's death, but they actually got the permission from the family to do that. So, it wasn't.
I
Yeah,
I was angry at the time as that, but then at the end when I was watching the interview, the Undertaker's interview, he said at the end of the day we thought he'll be up there and he'll be saying, "Yes, do it. It's amazing to do this." So she bring him to life, even though you bring him as top of gender of the main event, even though he's not with us anymore. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, and also
with CM
it
Punk.
gave that extra element to the story, didn't it? I mean, it was that WrestleMania match between CM Punk and the Undertaker was mind-blowingly good. It was. I mean,
But but
there was
but
some people saying that CM Punk should have ended the streak, and I think I would have got along with that if they hadn't invoked Paul Bearer's name in the storyline. I think if you're disrespecting the memory of Paul Bearer, then you need to get punished for that in the storyline. So I think if they hadn't brought in Paul Bearer, I think CM Punk should have gone over. But I think as that was happening, it needed to be a win for Paul Bearer, if that makes sense.
but
Because I am a massive CM Punk fan, but again, it's like with Shawn Michaels. I can't I can't pretend there's something about him that ruffles a lot of feathers, and not in a good way either. And this isn't the first time he's had problems with people, is it? Let's be honest. But yeah, just going back to the Montreal thing. Now, different people have claimed different things about their involvement. Jim Cornette has, in recent years, said that he didn't actually know they were going to go with it, but he did actually suggest the finish for that match where Bret cheated out the title. He said he actually likes Bret Hart and dislikes Shawn Michaels, but like it was just a case of they needed to protect their own interests really, and he suggested to Vince, in his words, about because they said that he'd know about the Wendy Richter Moolah finish. So he said, well, how about Shawn gets him in the sharpshooter, and that's when they ring the bell. But again, sort of Jim Cornette says he hates the idea that he was partly responsible for that. But when it actually happened, he didn't know they were going to go with it. And
Oh my God.
speaking of Jim Cornette, his arch nemesis Vince Russo, after the screw job, Mick Foley actually had a massive go at Vince Russo, and Vince was heartbroken because he actually had no knowledge of it at the time, and it really hurt him that Mick Foley, who he had a lot of respect for, would blame him for it. And and also let's not forget that at the end of the event, Mick Foley actually left for what he went on strike for a while, didn't he? He didn't show up for a show or two
in protest.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in the end he was talked into coming back, and I think they assumed he was coming back, but they just gave him time to cool off. And in Foley's book, he says, well, there's no point in him sitting at home sort of while Bret's in WCW making millions. He's not doing himself any favors, is he? So, I mean, I really like Mick Foley as a person because, like I say, Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler, and Foley is my favorite wrestler, stroke human being. He's just such a likable guy, isn't he? He really cares about the business.
I can't think of anyone on that level. Yeah, he's very. Everyone likes him because no one's got any arguments against. Really, not much against him.
Yeah, but he has had his rivalries like with in real life with people like Ric Flair, but they're I think they're friends again now, so that's all okay. So yeah, he has had conflicts with people behind the scenes, but most people sort of respect him. So
he's friends because he was at the Ric Flair did that last match thing.
Yeah,
he was sitting there with the Undertaker. I liked him when he was commissioner and stuff as well.
Yeah. So we're talking about people who were in the know about the screw job. Obviously, like I said, Jim Cornette didn't know what was happening at the time, or claims he didn't know. Vince Russo claims he didn't know. Bruce Pritchard has also said he didn't know. And he was actually, and Undertaker didn't know either. They were both upset about it. And I think there was some kind of tension between him and Undertaker because both thought the other knew about it and were keeping it from the other one. Gerald Briscoe knew because he actually taught Shawn some self-defense moves in case Bret was going to attack him afterwards.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was got that serious. I mean, because obviously it did. They knew it would affect Bret really badly, so they wanted to make sure that Shawn could defend himself if need be. And I think Triple H knew. I can't prove that, but I think he did know. I'd imagine Shawn told him. I mean, in the Wrestling with Shadows documentary, Triple H says to the founder, "I swear to God, I had nothing to do with it." And I think that's true up until a point. He wasn't involved with the decision making, but I think he did know about it. He didn't have anything to do with it, but he knew about it, if that made sense. I've also seen an interview with China, and she claims she didn't know about it, and she claims she was outraged. But again, just read into that what you will. Obviously, sadly, China is no longer with us. But she says actually in her interview that on the way back to the hotel, a crazed Bret fan actually jumped on her shoulders. She had to get them off of her, yeah.
And it was nice. It was nice in the ring when Bret Hart came out to Shawn Michaels called him out to the ring, and they made up and cuddled.
Oh yeah, that was what year was that? I've got that written down.
Don't ask what year, but I know all I remember is, and it was I thought it was going to be some storyline, but you could tell straight away because it was genuine because of this real life situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it was January the 4th. It was January the 4th, 2010. And Bret returns to WWE. He actually had been inducted in the Hall of Fame a few years prior, but Vince and Shane were not at that ceremony. I think Shane was there when Bret punched Vince, and it was in front of him. So they both avoided that ceremony. And I can't remember what Bret's speech now, but apparently he did make a dig at Vince McMahon in that speech. Yeah, but yeah, during Bret's return to Raw, they brought out Shawn first of all, and they both got to say their piece, and at one point they hug and make up, and then it looks like Shawn's sizing up for the super kick. It's really cleverly done. Then Shawn just hugs him again, and they leave as friends. Then later in the day, this is all part of this is all part of the storyline, but then Vince and Bret face each other, and Vince says to Bret, please apologize to me. And Bret says, I've got a few words I'd like to say to you, but sorry is not one of them. But in the end, they sort of they look like they're making up, and they raise their arms in the air together. Then Vince low blows Bret,
Oh,
and
I
then
don't
that
remember
leads
that
to
bit.
the. Don't you remember they had a match at WrestleMania afterwards?
What, Vince?
Yeah, even Bret with his concussion, he had a match against Vince at WrestleMania, and it was pretty abysmal, to be fair. But it wasn't. Vince isn't a wrestler, and Bret was obviously not in the best shape, so you can forgive them for that, really. But yeah, so in the end, yeah, Bret beats Vince in the sharpshooter at WrestleMania.
So it's good that they can actually, obviously not best of friends anymore, but just they can just be just civil friends.
Right, so I've got a question for you now. This is probably is a bit unfair. You're not had time to think about this because I have thought hard about this. How would you get out of that situation without screwing Bret? Say you're Vince McMahon, how would you get out of that situation? I've got a possible solution. I'm not saying it's watertight, but it's the best solution I can think of.
What do you mean about
So
sort of?
so you need Bret to lose the title at Survivor
Yeah.
Series, but Shawn isn't going to be Shawn. So how do you get around that?
What you mean? Well, after the screw job, you mean?
No, no, at Survivor Series, say we're going to avoid the screw job.
Yeah.
We're going to take Bret the title off Bret in a way he's happy with. Can you think of a way around that?
The only thing I can think of is it was a simple thing, but it's too simple. But maybe due to injury, he can't compete anymore. He has to just give his belt up.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing, I guess, but then you've still got him saying he never got beaten for the championship, haven't you? If when he goes to Nitro, potentially, and also
Yeah.
that is something he actually did suggest that after Survivor Series, he just hands the belt over on Raw to Vince, and that didn't sound good. That didn't sound an ideal solution. I'll tell you my theory because it is a tough question, and you could probably pick holes in my theory, but I'll tell you what I would do. He loses the belt to Owen at the Survivor Series in a triple threat match. So how I would have done it is the previous Raw, Steve Austin and Owen Hart had their Intercontinental title match. Owen was the Intercontinental champion, and Steve beats him at Survivor Series. But instead, you have that previous Raw. Steve Austin says, "I can't wait till Survivor Series. I want you now." And then Steve beats him at Raw. But what happens is Bret interferes, but it backfires and it costs Owen the title. And Steve wins the Intercontinental title at Raw, and then Owen is angry with Bret, and Shawn Michaels was at ringside. Maybe some kind of argument between Bret and Shawn costs Owen the title. Then somehow Owen gets figured into a triple threat match at Survivor Series, and Bret makes it up to him. So I said, "Well, I'll get you involved with this match then." And Shawn says, "I don't care. I can beat both of you," and that's how they do it. And then what would happen is Owen beats Bret at the Survivor Series, just pins him, and then Bret anoints Owen as the new champion and new leader of the Hart Foundation, and Bret gets a nice send off.
No, I'm just saying, yeah, that could work. Yeah, it could have worked. Yeah.
Now there are a couple of faults with that scenario that Shawn may still not have gone along with it. Maybe not even Bret, but I think him dropping the belt to his brother, a fellow Canadian, may have been more appealing. And also, Vince McMahon didn't see Owen as a mid card as a main event talent. He only saw him as a mid carder. So
Yeah.
these are all things I don't think Vince would have gone for it, but that would have been my solution. I mean, obviously it's easy to speak fondly of Owen now. He's no longer with us, and obviously he died in tragic circumstances. But I was always very high on Owen. I thought he was a real talent, and I think a world title on him would not have been unthinkable.
He's very popular, popular with his face or heel, and everyone remembers him when he had his two awards in one award in each hand,
His slammies, yeah.
and it's like when it was British Bulldog beat Bret Hart, you know, for the title, and Bret Hart congratulated him and stuff, you know.
Mm. Yeah, we're going to talk about it in the future, aren't we? We're going to talk about SummerSlam 1992 because we were both there.
I didn't realise that was the match because I was so far away.
Yeah.
I was right at the top.
Yeah, they were just like matchsticks, weren't they? We had to watch it on the big screen above the ring, but it was still an experience, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a discussion for another
Yeah.
episode. We should probably shelve that for now. Save that for later.
Yeah, that could be saved for later. Yeah, it's just funny. We could have been sitting together without knowing. But I've got my ticket somewhere. But
yeah, I'm not sure where mine is. Yeah. So I think that wraps up our discussion on the Montreal Screwjob. Is there anything else you want to say on that subject?
no, that's all of it. That's all.
Our next discussion will be the alliance, which is WCW and ECW against the WWF. And we'll look at that storyline, possibly why it wasn't as good as it could have been, and how we would have booked it differently.
That was quite one of the enjoyable things, seeing all that and stuff, and I think actually I'll save it for
save it for next time. Yeah, but again, it's interesting that you actually enjoyed it because a lot of people regard it as a disappointment. So we'll get your thoughts on that next time. Now, normally I like to give our sources for this, but that's really difficult because there's so many different interviews I've watched over the years for the Montreal Screwjob. It's hard to credit everyone and say where the sources were. But again, I would encourage you all to check out Wrestling Bios, that channel on YouTube, and just watch their documentaries on the Montreal Screwjob. They're very interesting. That's what Lionel looked at earlier. The Juggernauts of Wrestling is brought to you by jingtvonline.com. That's my own particular comedy project. And you can search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, a number of places. But if you go to jingtvonline.com, you'll find all the links there. And if you've heard anything in this podcast or the previous one that you agree with or disagree with, don't get upset. Just give us your thoughts at juggernautsofwrestling@gmail.com. And again, if you've got any thoughts or questions you want for the next podcast, where we're discussing the Alliance versus WWF, then email us at juggernautsofwrestling@gmail.com. And thank you, Lionel, for joining me. And join us next time for the Juggernauts of Wrestling. The Juggernauts of Wrestling is sponsored by Jing TV. When I say sponsored, I mean the person who created Jing TV also is doing this podcast. That's Lee, not Lionel, because they look very similar. But anyway, go to Jing TV Online or search for Jing TV Online on TikTok, on Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, other places as well. I can't really remember right now. But yes, the message is Jing TV Online.